He still wanted to close the roads. At the final hours prior to the event, we sent him the safety plan that we developed after we knew he received permission to be on the historic courthouse. Sent him the plan, what we were planning, which was to lead the march from the chapel to the courthouse. His participants would disperse into the courthouse grounds, and we provided overflow for any excess participants to go to the northeast and northwest corners of Court Square, to include the use of Sesquicentennial Park. He was made aware of this plan prior to, and it was made very clear that no road closure was authorized, and we provided the reasoning for that. And not only was it a polling issue, it was also a DOT issue, which would have also required their permission to close the Court Square due to it being NC 87. Towards the conclusion of the event, the Sheriff's Office had interaction with people in the rally that led to people coming out into the streets. When we tried to prevent people from being in the streets at that point, one of our officers was assaulted. And at that point, that's when we deemed that it was an unsafe event and deemed that it was unlawful, and we went ahead and dispersed the crowd. The disbursement measures we used was using a pepper fogger that was never directed at any person. We directed it towards the ground. That created a vapor that kind of just went into the air as an irritant. Our officers were never ordered to don masks or anything like that, so they suffered the same effects of it as well. It's a mild irritant, and we chose to use that rather than physical force to get people moved out of the roadway. I understand that some people were saying that we pepper spray children and disabled folks. Again, I'm going to reiterate, we never directly sprayed anyone in the face. It was all directed towards the ground in an effort to disperse the crowd. The initial disbursement was after they made it to Court Square. We allowed them to pause for 8 minutes and 40-some seconds. And after about 9 minutes, told them they needed to clear the road. Once it was clear that they had no intention to clear the road, we sprayed a couple sprays on the ground, and the crowds moved to the respective areas where they were at. There was adequate space in front of the courthouse to accommodate his group. I think we estimated between 125 and 150 participants. There was plenty of space in the courthouse to accommodate that. This event was never scheduled to go to the polls. It was scheduled to go to the courthouse, and after their rally, they were provided instruction that if anyone that wished to vote could leave utilizing our city sidewalks to go to the polling sites. We didn't want to authorize a road closure directing them to the polls because, again, road closures such as that require us to cordon off the area for an hour or so before the event starts, and to keep it cordoned off until the road's cleared. That would have caused us to have to close all the parking on West Elm, around Court Square, and North Main Street. As you know, there's not much parking in downtown Graham, and that would have taken a decent amount of our parking that people were utilizing to get to the voting polls. I mentioned the timeline of events. We will be compiling a complete list of all the timeline with detailed dates. We also have several emails. Those will be available upon request. We'll have that completed timeline probably by the close of business day on Tuesday or early Wednesday. And as far as the use of forces that people are concerned about, those will be investigated per our policy as any other use of force would be. And once we complete those investigations, we'll make a determination on whether those use of forces were within our policy. We need the public to understand that we made every effort to coordinate with the planner of this event to ensure that it was successful. For future events, we need viable communication that allows for adequate and proper planning so the organizers can relay that information to the participants and everyone has a clear understanding of the safety plan. Their intent from the beginning was to take the road. Prior to them leaving Wayman's Chapel, he was seen on Facebook Live telling the crowd that we did not authorize a road closure and that he wanted the participants to block the road. We knew that going in, and we wanted to ensure the safety of not only them, because the roads were still open, but we wanted to ensure the safety of all the visitors to downtown Graham and for the polling site. Previous events in Alamance County, such as Souls to the Polls, were successful events and should be an example of proper coordination with local agencies to ensure safety. That event led to 208 votes being casted by Alamance County residents. That was done by proper coordination and communication with law enforcement. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you go over the specifics of what that chemical was, maybe like brand name or ingredients?
It's a pepper fogger similar to OC spray, but rather than coming out in a stream, just comes out in a vapor form.
Do you know how many people were arrested and did anyone do jail time?
I know our agency arrested 8. Of those 8, 5 were not Alamance County residents, and one of those was a member of the media. Demographic details haven't been verified yet. Once the reports are completed, I'll release a press release showing, identifying the individuals that were arrested.
Lieutenant, could you comment on the reporter who was arrested and why? And upon learning that he was a reporter, why he was still arrested?
Yes, sir. I don't have exact details, but my understanding is that he was given the command to get out of the roadway multiple times, 5 to be exact. And after the 5th time he was asked to be removed from the roadway is when he was approached and placed in custody.
So what were the charges for the 8 arrested?
They ranged from resist, delay, and obstruct, failure to disperse, and one was an assault on a law enforcement officer.
Can you also comment on the sort of reports we've heard on the side that there was an issue with respect to a gas can and a generator that were on courthouse grounds contrary to the permit?
Yes, sir.
I realize that's the sheriff's permit, but can you comment on it?
During the permitting process, the organizers are advised that they are not to have any gas-powered generators on the property due to the flammable nature of the accelerants that are used to power them. They don't want gas cans right up next to the courthouse. My understanding is Mr. Drumlight was aware and signed the agreement. One of the participants was seen carrying a gas can into the closed-off area right in front of the historic courthouse. When the deputies investigated, I believe they found a generator and the gas can, and when they went to confiscate it was when the event came to conclusion.
And was it concealed, as I understand, in a baby carriage or something?
My understanding that it was concealed, but the sheriff's office will have to verify that.
Did the department consider any other methods of crowd control before using pepper spray?
We gave numerous verbal commands. The only option other than using the mild irritant would have been physical force, and we did not want to physically force people out of the roadway and physically force them. The mild irritant, like I said, was exposed to the officers as well as the people, so it wasn't an extreme irritant. It's not even compared to taking the stream of OC to the face. It's literally just a mild irritant that gets in the air that makes you a little uncomfortable for a little bit. I will say that after the major event towards the end, is there was people that were staged for EMS treatment. We requested our fire department had coordinated with EMS, and we had a strike team that was going in to assist anyone that was injured, and we did render aid to multiple. They did render aid to multiple people. I'm not sure if anyone was actually transported to the hospital, but I know one was treated and refused. I know they refused transport.
Lieutenant, my understanding from Reverend Drumlight's people is that he had an agreement with the chief to have an 8-minute pause on the North Main Street approach to the courthouse.
Yes.
He contends that they were entitled to that 8-minute George Floyd salute right immediately in front of the monument. My understanding, you tell me, that they'd already paused for about 5 minutes blocking Hardin Street. Was the agreement fulfilled, or who didn't fulfill it?
My understanding is we fulfilled the agreement. The information I received is that we actually waited until after the 9-minute mark when they were on Fort Square before we give the order to disperse for them to go into their respective areas.
I was there and I did not hear that command. Can you explain how it was given?
The only way we could give it is verbally, and our officers were there. I've seen videos where officers were seen waving people towards the areas where they were supposed to be. I can't say if it would have been projected for a long distance.
Any sort of amplification, bullhorn?
The initial one was not, but we also iterated to Mr. Drumlight, and I will say that just prior to the event starting, the attorney representing him sent us a message saying they agreed to our safety plan and understood it. And I'm assuming that he told his people that, but from what I understand, he did not. He gave them not order, but he told them to basically block the road. That even though we weren't allowing them to have it, he just told them to block it.
So to clarify that point, if the 8-minute pause is being distinguished from the 9-minute,
Yes, we were under the understanding that it was like 8 minutes and 42 seconds that they were going to pause. We had agreed that we were gonna allow them to pause in the road for that time frame. And my understanding is that we did not give the order to disperse till after the 9-minute mark. So they had over the time that we agreed to.
And were you also aware of the Hardin Street stop?
Yes, we were.
And
They were
that was
brief,
allowed?
they were brief pauses. We didn't take that, we didn't classify those as their time stop. We didn't even count those into consideration. So we knew that they were still gonna do the 8-minute, 42-minute pause.
So access to the polling, was that a part of the issue here, or
As far as,
what happened to, like, it needed to stop at 8 minutes because that was the agreement, or was it because people needed to get to the polls? I'm trying to get clarity on what caused you to have to, that it's time to go.
the agreement initially was explicitly stated that we were not authorizing a road closure for the voting site reasons. And we agreed prior to the event starting that we would allow the pause for 8 minutes and 42 seconds. And then once that time concluded, we were under the understanding that they were aware of that and that they would move to their respective areas, which would be in front of the historic courthouse or the other 2 areas we created to make room for overflow.
Kind of during that discussion process, can you talk more about why law enforcement felt it was so important to keep that one road open? Now, I'm guessing there are other routes to polls as well.
Main Street is a major thoroughfare through Graham. Elm Street was also access for the pull-up voting, which is a one-way street once you pass over Maple. So a lot of people would use Court Square from Elm Street around Court Square to go straight up to the voting polls to do their in-car voting.
Does the department have any regrets with the way things were handled yesterday?
There's disappointment. We were hoping to have a safe event. We wanted to have good coordination with the event coordinator. We wanted them to have a successful event. They were under the same understanding we were, that we thought when the event started that they were not authorized to keep the road closed for an extended period of time, that the road closure was temporary just to accommodate the march, which we led from the chapel, had road closures up to the courthouse. And when we gave the order to clear the road, when it was clear to our officers that the people had no intent of clearing the road, that's when we deployed the pepper fogger measure just to get them out of the roadway.
Let me come to the end of the event, and the question is, and again, Reverend Drumwright's very insistent that his permit was till 2 o'clock or possibly 2:30 for takedown and so forth.
Yes.
Yet y'all, or the sheriff's department, came out and announced an end at about 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it ended early, and why was no announcement explaining why it was ended early? And what was the reason?
My understanding was that once they saw the generator, that when they went to confiscate the generator, there was a disturbance of, I'm not sure if the deputy was assaulted or whatnot, but that's when the crowd became violent. That's when it got pushed out into Court Square when people were getting out from in front of the historic courthouse.
And you say no injuries and no one transported, or?
I'm not saying no injuries. I'm just saying that I'm not aware of anybody that was actually transported to the hospital. I know that there was I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I know several were transported by the strike team, and they were brought to a triage location where they were evaluated by EMS, and then a determination was made whether they needed to be transported to the hospital.
In your talks with organizers, did you discuss what would happen after that moment of silence and how people would be moved? I mean, that is a place where it's kind of a conjunction of a lot of traffic. It seems like it would be a part of that.
That's where the coordination failed. We made multiple attempts to get Mr. Drumwright to come and do a walkthrough of the event to see where everything was located, where the entrances and egresses were for their access to the historic courthouse, how they were gonna get, and those meetings never came. We made multiple requests, and he never honored any of the meeting requests and never came to do a walkthrough.
Did you meet in person at all?
We met one time on the 20th. That's when we discussed the 5 different plans that we had with different routes and different rally points. He was still intent on doing a road closure, which we made it very clear that due to the proximity to the voting sites, we were not going to allow a road closure. And then we even sent him to the sheriff's office to get the historic courthouse to use as a rally point, because we had a large front lawn there that accommodates several people. And then when he gave the approximate number of participants at 512,000, we decided then, okay, we'll create some overflow to accommodate anyone that can't fit on the front line. And once we saw the number of the crowd at 125, 150, that's when we deemed that there was plenty of space in front of the courthouse for the group to go.
So what was the distance that they were gonna march? You have any?
I'd say it's half a mile. I believe it was roughly that. I don't know exactly, but I believe it was about a half mile.
Does the department's policies and procedures, do they, speak to using less lethal weapons when there are children or elders present? Is that something that,
Our use of force policy delves into the use of less lethal force. It doesn't per se say anything about the presence of minors. At that point, as a police perspective, once you've been, my thought is that once you're given the order to disperse by law enforcement, you've been notified that it's an unlawful gathering. For us, I would, and me personally, watching it on video when I was at the command post, never saw any children. I know there were some there, but I never saw any on video. But that we do regret. We didn't want any children to get hurt. We didn't want anybody to get hurt. And the fact that a child was exposed to the pepper fog is unfortunate. But we were very clear in what we were trying to get people to do. We were trying to get people clear from the street. And once it became violent, our officers got assaulted. That's when it's time that we deemed it then as unsafe, and we were dispersing the crowd.
And Mr. Drummer, it says part of the agreement is he and the others are not permitted to return to Graham for 72 hours as part of the release process. Is that true?
That was issued by the magistrate. I haven't confirmed that. I don't know what their conditions of release were. One more question.
Can you clarify what the assault with the officer was? What happened in that?
He was struck in the chest.
Was that an Alamance County Sheriff's officer
It was
or
our
Graham?
police officer, yes, sir.
What? Go ahead.
Alamance County Sheriff's Office was responsible for the security on the historic courthouse. We were responsible for all the street operations, so we were maintaining the Court Square, North Main Street, and all the sidewalks around it. So once the event started, we were basically just standing by waiting for the event to clear, to help pedestrian traffic get across the road, and if they wanted to go vote, or if they wanted to go back to their vehicles, go back.
One more question about the setup, though.
Yes.
There didn't seem to be any setup until Reverend Drumright and the marchers were at Court Square. There was a truck or two over on the right-hand side. Why? My understanding was they were going to set up ahead of time, but didn't. Do you have any idea?
The sheriff's office, I believe, granted their permit starting at 8:30 to give them time to set up a stage, because they were given approval by the county to do that. And our understanding was that if they were going to set one up, they could set it up in that time frame. We also offered them the use of the Centennial Park in the Northwest Court Square to put their stage and generator, because that generator was part of their presentation, to set up the stage and generator there so they had power for their microphones and whatnot, so the group could hear. One more question.
Was there concern, however, that they were also using the truck to try to block traffic?
It was, but we told the driver they needed to move the vehicle. They were given time to offload the generator at the Northwest Court Square at Centennial Park, and they were able to get the stage into the courthouse.
Well, why do they need two generators? You got the generator there, then the one that was discovered on the courthouse grounds.
That's a question for them. I'm not sure.
are you gonna do an after action?
Yes, ma'am. We will do an extra action briefing, and it will be made public.
Would you state your name and title for the record, please?
Lieutenant Daniel Sisk.
Spell it, please.
DANIELSISK.
And you're with?
Grand Police Department.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys.